I thought I had it all together, but I was led astray the day you walked away. You were the clock that was ticking in my heart, changed my state of mind when love's so hard to find. Your feelings changed like the weather, went from clear to gray, all that time of day. How can I go on with the falling apart?
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 16 of the Hog Line Podcast. As always, I am your host, Mitchell Bananas. It's just me today. Wanted to have Joey Bolton on, our editor of the show, but it didn't work out today. So it's just me today here in studio. First and foremost, before we go on with today's episode, just wanted to apologize that I'm a little under the weather today as I'm recording this. So if you hear something strange, a little bit off with my voice today, that is why. Little sore throat action, not too serious, just a little cold. So yeah, so I apologize for that if my voice sounds a little weird during the episode today. But I have a lot to get into today. Big night in sports last night, the NBA opening night. 2 games. We had the 76ers take on the Boston Celtics. My Boston Celtics, they got the W. I'll be talking about that for sure. And the late game was between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Golden State Warriors. Warriors took that one. I'll be getting to that as well. And after I talk about NBA, I'm going to be getting into the NFL. Week 7, big week. Some teams, make it or break it. This could be a big game for a lot of teams this week. So a lot to get into there. And yeah, at the end of the show, I'll give my starts and sits as I usually do as well. Yeah, I wasn't going to do starts and sits, but there's a lot of big teams on bye this week. So you may have a lot of players that are unavailable in your lineup this week. So I wanted to give my thoughts on who maybe could be good replacement for those guys and all that stuff. So should be a fun episode, and I'm going to get right into it. The NBA kicked off last night. As I mentioned, the 2 games were between the 76ers and the Celtics, and the Thunder and the Warriors. Let's start off with, the Celtics. Wow. I was over the moon. We looked so good. Sorry, Sixers fans, we looked amazing. We're running the East this year. No. It's still 81 games in the playoffs to go. I don't want to overreact too much, but Celtics look great, honestly. Really dominant, really deep, and we just got scoring from everywhere. I was just so impressed because, even in a game without too much of a scoring presence from Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, the Celtics still seem to dominate, that just attests to our incredible depth. You get Jason Tatum, who goes for 23 points and 9 rebounds, and you have one of my favorite players. I love Marcus Morris. He had a huge game last night, 16 and 10 off the bench, and if he can contribute on a regular basis like that, teams are going to have a tough time stopping the Celtics, especially on offense. And the Celtics play great defense, too. You saw Al Horford with a bunch of big blocks, 2 that I remember exactly that stick out my mind on Joel Embiid. So, the Celtics just looked amazing on all cylinders of the game last night. And, it's great when you can beat a team that is supposedly it should be one of the best in the East this year in the 76ers. So, I couldn't have been happier with last night's performance. And in terms of the 76ers, they're going against obviously a great team, but on the road to add to that. But, they didn't look bad. It's not like they played bad. Like they just ran into a good team with a good defense. And, Simmons balled out. I don't remember his exact stats, but he must have came close to a triple-double. He's obviously a player with great court vision. And he had that one pass to Fultz where Ben was driving, and it was a little behind the back action to Fultz. So should see a lot of that out of Simmons this year, obviously. And, he balled out. Embiid, I think he had around, I didn't look this up. I should have looked this up before the episode, but I think he had 24, 23 points and close to 10 boards, if not over 10 boards. But, actually, one thing I did notice with the Sixers is that they just turn the ball over a lot. There was this one stretch in the second quarter where they're just I don't know, it just seemed like they were turning the ball over like every possession. I know it probably wasn't every possession, but it just seemed that way. And, that's been a problem with the Sixers. And obviously, if you watch the playoff series closely versus the Celtics, turnovers just killed them and, kept them out of games. So they got to clean that up. Obviously, it's just the game one of a long, long regular season in the NBA. So I'm sure they'll clean it up. The Sixers, there's nothing to worry about there. But, it's a little concerning if I don't know. It's just so weird. I know Ben Simmons is so good and all, and I've said that, and I truly believe that. But it's just so weird how someone can survive in the NBA today without like a competent jump shot. But maybe it'll improve, maybe it won't. But he just seems to find a way to work without having a competent jump shot per se. But I always like to throw out the stat that I had just as many threes as Ben Simmons did last year. He had 0. I had 0. So we're pretty much the same on that level. No, we're not. But, anyway, that's the Sixers and Celtics. Don't want to go on too much about the Celtics. I could talk about the Celtics all day and how good we are, but I don't think anyone wants to hear that right now. We'll save it for a later date because I'm sure I'll have plenty of praise for them throughout the season and all of that. So, yeah, that was the 8 o'clock game. The 10:30 game was between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Golden State Warriors. The Thunder without, obviously, their best player, Russell Westbrook. And to be honest, they impressed me. They hung around. They kept it closer at the whole entire game. And it wasn't, I knew that the Warriors were probably going to run away with it towards the fourth quarter. And they obviously did. They closed it out, won by 8 points. But, the Thunder looked good. And I don't know how many games Russ is going to miss. I tried to look that up. I couldn't really find a straight answer, but hopefully it's not too many. I don't think it will be, but he's coming off that knee surgery, if any of you didn't know, so that's why he couldn't play last night. But, the Thunder didn't look that bad. Dennis Schroeder, started in place of Russell Westbrook at the point guard position, and he looked pretty good. I know he didn't shoot incredibly great. I think he shot under 40%, which is not good by any means, but he looked good. He was aggressive, went to the hole, and was looking to drive, looking to score, and that's what they needed because they're obviously missing that without Westbrook on the floor. Schroeder went off for, I think, with 8 boards and 21 points, which is pretty good. And, a lot of people were talking him up for 6th man of the year this year, and I didn't really even, consider him, but I think Jack actually mentioned him on the NBA preview show that we recorded a few days ago, but he looked great, and if he can provide that scoring presence off the bench for the Thunder when Russ returns, I mean, he could be well in that conversation of 6th man of the year. So, Dennis Schroeder, he was on the Hawks last year, and it's always been. I always liked his game. Has a scorer's mentality and aggressive and likes to shoot the ball. So, good for him. He looked nice. And Paul George, despite a little inefficiency, he still did well. He also shot under 40%, so not good numbers percentage-wise, and I think he had 4 or 5 turnovers, which is not ideal, but he still scored a lot, and he did his thing, so I always said Paul George is a little streaky. He could show flashes of him scoring 40 and making 7, 8 threes in a game, but he can also have those games that just get away from him, and he's kind of pedestrian and isn't really noticeable in those games, so still obviously a top 25, top 30 player in the league. Probably, maybe even shortchanging him there. He may be even better than that. But, this could be a good team. And obviously, Jack is a huge, not a fan of Carmelo Anthony. He thinks that since he's not on the team anymore, that's just a huge monkey off their back. And to a degree, it might be true. So we will see how the Thunder, how their season progresses. And, battling it out with the defending champs without their best player by far is good signs to come, especially on the road in a hostile environment after coming off their ring ceremony. So the Warriors, I'll talk about them a little bit. What is there to say about them? Everyone's tired of talking about them. I'm tired of talking about them. It's only the first game of the season. Everyone's tired of talking about them. Steph Curry, I think he had 32 points, 9 boards and 8 assists, if I'm not mistaken, something around that those numbers. But Steph Curry is he's the mitochondria of the Golden State Warriors, if you may. He's the powerhouse of the team, and they run through him. So obviously they can survive without him from a talent perspective, but there's just something off when he's not on the floor. So hopefully he can, remain healthy. As everyone, I hope everyone can remain healthy. I say that every episode, but if he's not there, it's a little concerning. And I only say that because he's had health issues. You see him miss time with, whether it's like an ankle injury or like a knee problem. So hopefully he can be a little bit more durable this year. And I mean, he's scary. We all know what Steph Curry can do. So, that's the words. And it's scary to think that they'll get even better with DeMarcus Cousins. I know that's still months out from now. Could be Christmas. Could be whenever. He's coming off that, egregious Achilles injury. So that's nothing to mess with. And hopefully he will be back. Hopefully not. I mean, for the rest of the league's sake. So, but it's scary to think that they'll get even better, and they will. So, yeah. It's just I was so excited for it to be back last night, and there's so many good games. I watched a little bit of the Nets and Pistons. Two not so great teams. I don't expect the Nets to be good at all. I think I had them in the worst team in the league on the NBA preview show, but I just love basketball. I could watch a Nets and Pistons game, and it was a good game. It came down to the wire, so it's great that the NBA is back and just another sport to watch. It's a great time of year, October. You got all the sports going right now. Yeah, so that's all I'm going to talk about last night's game. A lot of good games on right now. I believe it just started by the time you're hearing this, it'll obviously be over. This will be up probably on Thursday. So, but the Mavericks and the Suns go at it tonight on ESPN. I believe it started at 10:30. Just started about 15 minutes ago. Luka Doncic versus DeAndre Ayton and the new look Suns. Let's see what the Suns can do this year. So what wouldn't have originally been a very exciting game between the Mavericks and the Suns, a lot of young talent there, so it's exciting to watch, and that's why they put it on ESPN. So if you have free time, I hope you had checked that out last night. And yeah, LeBron, I almost forgot, LeBron James, Laker debut tomorrow night, 10:30 against the Portland Trail Blazers and Damian Lillard. It's going to be weird. Not going to lie, it's going to be a little weird to see him in the purple and yellow, but, that's what we got to get used to for the next 4 years, I guess. I'm just excited to see how he mixes with all those new pieces. I'm in a fantasy basketball league, and I recently drafted Lonzo Ball, and I didn't know how I felt about that at first, but the more I think about it, I don't know. With all that can be said about Lonzo and all the distractions and his dad and, obviously he's a bigger name than his game sometimes, but his game isn't bad. He averaged 10, 7, and 7 last year. I think he had a steal a game too. So those are pretty good numbers, and if he can build on that, you're looking at a guy who could potentially be a triple-double threat on a nightly basis in a year or two. So I don't know. We'll see how it all mixes together. A lot of personalities in that team with Stevenson and Rondo and LeBron. So it'll be interesting to see how they all mix together. And that'll all be tomorrow night, and I can't wait to watch that. And Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers. And I've always been a Damian Lillard fan, We talked about it on the NBA preview show that, guy came from a small school and, seems like he always plays with a chip on his shoulder, and we'll see what the Trailblazers have in store as well. So, very excited. NBA season is back. I can't wait. It's going to be a fun 9 months or so, however long that is until the NBA Finals. 9 months, something like that. Yeah, so that's going to conclude our NBA talk, and I'm going to move on to the NFL. Week 7. Like I said, I don't know if I said earlier in the episode, but there are 4 teams on byes this week. It's the Steelers, Packers, Seahawks, and Raiders. So, a lot of guys in your fantasy teams. I think I did say that. A lot of guys in your fantasy teams that might not be available, and there's a lot of, I'm gonna get into it after I talk about some storylines, my starts and sits. But yeah, I was looking at the games, and there weren't too many matchups that looked that like they could be great games. I don't know. I mean, every week is special in the NFL season, but I don't know. There was something missing this week when I looked at all those games in the slate for Week 7. But there are a few there. Important game for the Eagles for sure. All you Eagles fans listening, very important game for you guys. You're coming in at 3-3, taking on the Carolina Panthers, who are, I think they're 3-2. if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, they had a bye, so they definitely played 5 games. I'm pretty sure they're 3-2. Anyway, Eagles, very important. Every game's important for every team, but especially the Eagles now that they didn't really get off to the start they quite wanted to. 3-3, but this should be a great game. You got Cam Newton coming into Philadelphia, see how the Eagles can handle him. And I don't know. I'm excited to watch this game. We'll see how Carson Wentz does. A lot of fantasy experts are projecting a big game from Carson Wentz because the Panthers defense hasn't really been too great against the pass this year. So could be a big week for Carson Wentz. We'll see how that goes for him. And go Panthers. That'll be the last thing I'd say on that. Hope the Panthers pull out the victory. Hope they do. Come on, Cam. Come through for me. The other game that stuck out to me was the Sunday night game. It actually got flexed to Sunday night. It was supposed to be the Rams and the 49ers on Sunday night football this week. But no one wants to see Todd Gurley run over the 49ers and the Rams win by 35 points. So the NFL made a wise decision, flexed that game out, and they put the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead on Sunday night. Bengals 4-2 coming off a loss to the Steelers. Go to Kansas City and they take on the 5-1 Chiefs, who came off a loss against the New England Patriots last Sunday night football. So 2 good teams this year, and should be a good game. But actually, I don't know. I for some reason I have this feeling that the Chiefs are gonna blow out the Bengals. I don't know why. Maybe it's because Andy Dalton hasn't necessarily been good on prime time in his career. So maybe I'm just thinking that he'll choke. But I don't know. I have a feeling that the Chiefs could win big in this game. They coming off a tough loss against New England, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, Mahomes looking great. So yeah, I'm starting Andy Dalton and Tyler Boyd this week. So I hope at least their offense shows up on Sunday night. So I hope I'm wrong in that regard, but I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that the Chiefs could take this one by big numbers. So if I were betting on this game, I would bet the Chiefs, and I don't know what the spread is or anything on that, but I would bet on the Chiefs for this game. So that would be my 2 cents about that. And yeah, that's all that jumped out for me this week in the NFL. I can't wait. Everything's lining up for me this week. I don't have too much homework to look at or any tests that important on the horizon, so I'm glad I can watch football guilt-free this Sunday. Everything's lining up. Should be a good week, and I am pumped. I hope you are too. So yeah, that's going to be that, and I'm going to give you my starts and sits now. I've gone, as you all know if you've listened to this before, I give you one at each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, my start and sit of the week. And we will start off with quarterback as usual. My start of the week is Phillip Rivers, taking on the Tennessee Titans in London. Game's at 9:30 in the morning, a little bit early. I love it, football even longer throughout the day. That's always a good thing. But I saw a lot of experts have Rivers in the sit-'em column, actually, because the Titans have had a good pass defense this year. I believe they've only let up, I could be wrong, they have only let up 8 passing touchdowns this year through 6 games, which is not a lot at all. That could be wrong, I'm not sure. But anyway, they have a good pass defense, at least above average. So a lot of people are staying away from Rivers this week. I am not. I think Rivers is going to go off. I just think this is a big Rivers week. And, all of his weapons are at his disposal. No one is banged up there. He utilized Tyrell Williams last week. He went off for 2 touchdowns last week against, who did they play? They played the Browns. So, they got a talented receiving core, and Melvin Gordon out the backfield, and Austin Eckler out the backfield. So all weapons for Rivers. I just think he goes off this week. I hope he does. I'm starting him in one of my leagues. My sit-'em at quarterback is Jameis Winston taking on the Cleveland Browns. A lot of people might be on the Winston bandwagon right now, especially because he went off for 30 points, I believe it was, last week against the Falcons. But the operative word in that sentence was the Falcons. They don't have a good defense. They are very banged up. So, I mean, any quarterback should put up good numbers against the Falcons. And, the Browns defense is nothing to joke about. They've got an elite pass rusher now in Myles Garrett. And, their defense is coming together, and I don't know. I'm just kind of wary about Winston this week. He seems like the kind of guy who would disappoint us and be very inconsistent. So that's what I am projecting there for Jameis Winston. At running back, my start of the week is a guy that I usually try to stay away from and I don't really like. I avoided him all draft season, didn't draft him in any of my teams, and rightfully so. He hasn't really had the best year, and I was right on this. But nonetheless, I am projecting a big week for Kenyon Drake versus the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions have been abysmal versus the run this year. I believe they let up close to, if not over, 6 yards a carry to running backs, which is terrible. Has to be the worst in the league. They are really bad. And, Drake hasn't really been getting a lot of work, really. He kind of still splits carries with Frank Gore, which is unbelievable how Frank Gore can, continue to produce at the age he's at. I think he's 34, 35. But, Kenyon Drake should only get about 12 to 16 touches in this game, but that may be all he needs to actually have a really good week this week. Like I said, the Lions are really bad on a per-touch basis against running backs. So you want to have Kenyon Drake in your lineup this week. I think it could be a big week for him. And, yeah, we'll see how that goes. My sit-em is a guy I'm very frustrated with. Lamar Miller. Sorry. I don't know. He's incredibly inefficient. Yards per carry is terrible. And he's facing the Jags defense, who are run stoppers, quite frankly. I don't know what they are against. I think I read somewhere they're under 3. I don't know where I'm getting all these stats from. I'm throwing a lot of stats here on today's episode, but Jags are really good against the run. Lamar Miller is really inefficient. Their offensive line's terrible, and he really hasn't been that great this year. So if you're starting Lamar Miller, you might be in a little trouble anyway. So I'd keep him on your bench and look for better options if I were you. Start at wide receiver. I have Robert Woods taking on the San Francisco 49ers. I love this one. Robert Woods has been killing it this year. The whole Rams offense has been killing it this year, but especially Robert Woods. If you got him at the round you got him at in your fantasy drafts, I think he was going in close to double-digit rounds. If you got him there, great pick good job on your part. He's definitely been outperforming his ADP in the beginning of the year, and he goes against the 49ers secondary, who is really bad. They're really bad against everyone. Aaron Rodgers torched him last week on Monday Night Football. And the reason why I'm especially high on him this week is because Cooper Kupp is out. He was ruled out, I believe it was yesterday. He was ruled out for this week. So even more targets could go Robert Woods' way, especially in the red zone, because Goff really likes Kupp in the red zone. So maybe that could be replaced by Robert Woods this week, and he scores a touchdown or two. So big week for Robert Woods. You definitely want to get him in your lineup. And I can't really think of that much better. Outside of, the obvious ones like Brown and all them. He should be a top 10 play, quite frankly. So definitely Robert Woods. You want to get him in there if you can. My sit, and this is really weird. You're not really sitting this guy. I just am a little cautious. It's Michael Thomas going against the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens have a good secondary, and the only reason kind of why I put him at the sit-em this week is Michael Thomas, is because, the Saints, a little bit of a different team outdoors. Don't want to really base my whole decision off the type of conditions they're playing in, but Ravens do have a good defense, and I don't know. Saints could not, they could put up less points than everyone's expecting them to, but again, you're never sitting Michael Thomas, but I don't know. I'd be a little cautious if I were you. At tight end, my stardom is Evan Ingram, if he plays. Hopefully he'll be back from his MCL sprain, which kept him out for the past 3 weeks, I believe it was. So if he's available on your waiver wires, you got to pick him up right now. Run to your computer, and you got to add him right away if he's not already taken. I believe he's owned in 75% of leagues, so probably won't be able to get him. But if he's there for some reason, you got to go get him. He plays the Falcons, who, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, have a very injury-riddled secondary. And Evan Ingram's practically a wide receiver, so he'll be running a lot of routes. And if he plays, he should be busy in the passing game. And I expect a big week from Evan Ingram in his return to action from injury. And lastly, my sit-em at tight end is CJ Uzomah. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know if I am. And he takes on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. This just goes back to what I said about the Bengals and Chiefs game. I don't know. I expect the Bengals to lay a dud. I'm not really expecting it, but I have a gut feeling they will. And CJ Uzomah may be lost in the cards. They still got a lot of guys they got to get the ball to. They got AJ Green, Tyler Boyd, maybe even John Ross if he's healthy, and Joe Mixon at the backfield. So this Uzomah could be the odd man out, and I don't know. Just with the dud I'm expecting the Bengals to put up, I don't know. I'd look for better options. Obviously, he's a guy you got off the waiver wire a week or two ago, so maybe you can look to replace him. But I don't know. With Jimmy Graham and Jared Cook and those guys out on buys, you may not have another option. But if you do, I would look elsewhere if you are a CJ Uzomah owner. All right. That is our episode today. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry about my voice again. I know it'll sound a little weird when I listen to it back, but thank you for sticking with me if you did all the way through. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Hogline Podcast, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts as we are looking to grow this as much as we can with The Hogline Podcast. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Mitchell Manis, and be sure to follow the show at The Hogline Podcast on Instagram. Thank you very much, and enjoy your weekend, everybody.
You need someone you can believe in. This I do declare. Trust me, I'll be there.